And when I talk about improving the candidate journey and the candidate experience, you may have 25 steps in your process and you can't be great at all of those. And technology can't be great for it. Your recruiter can't always be on. There's going to be limitations. And so what I've always really focused on are like, what are those 4 or 5 key moments that matter throughout the journey that you want to emphasize as your organization, what you want to stand for? Like, what are going to be your 10 commandments, so to speak? Right. And so focus on those.
Hi, and welcome to the show. I'm Johnny Campbell, CEO and co-founder of Social Talent. And this week on the podcast, we're speaking with Ryan Stene about candidate experience. So Ryan is the VP of Global Talent Attraction and Engagement at Wells Fargo. And Ryan is somebody who's been a friend for several years. We've known each other a lot, and he's gone through a personal journey in the last couple of years that I think is going to really inform the topic today and a different perspective on candidate experience than perhaps we've heard on the show before. But before we get into it, Ryan, you're very welcome to the show. Perhaps you might give our audience a little bit of an introduction to yourself, where you're joining us from, and who your employer is.
Hey, Johnny, thanks again for having me. It's always great to be with you. My name is Ryan Stene. I am based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I am with Wells Fargo, and I'm the VP of Global Talent Attraction and Engagement. It's really our recruitment marketing arm of talent acquisition. I've been in the industry for almost 20 years. My career started out a little bit different than most. I started on the HR tech space. So I had the opportunity to be with companies that did job distribution and recruitment marketing, and really getting a sense of implementation, the technology landscape, and how it evolved. Was with companies like Monster, where I was working with some of the largest brands on their recruitment marketing strategies. And then had the opportunity to join a recruitment marketing agency, the Arlen Group, where it was really early on in their journey to really help set the stage of where they were going to grow and how they were going to assist customers with their talent attraction and recruitment marketing needs. And then had the opportunity to what I call join the dark side, but I actually joined corporate America. My first role in corporate America was with Best Buy, where I stood up the recruitment marketing and operations function. So all recruitment operations that included everything from campus sourcing and hiring and onboarding and the onboarding journey. From there, I went over to Thomson Reuters as a senior director, leading technology and product recruiting and recruiting operations, which included also campus. It was an amazing opportunity, global role, 25,000 employees. It was a really great experience. And obviously that started at the 23, where things started to take a little bit of a turn in the marketplace. From there, I had the opportunity to join Crocs at Hey Dude, the shoe brand company. Really cool experience. Have way too many Jibbits now and too many Crocs in my house, but there stood up the recruitment operations function as well, that and really helped them get their technology stack, kind of laid out, everything from implementing SAP SuccessFactors to starting out with Paradox and a lot of their other technology stacks that they use today. Unfortunately, it was a short-lived journey, another opportunity for me to be laid off, and then had the opportunity to join Wells Fargo about 9 months later, and in a similar role that I am in today, leading our global talent and marketing and attraction team.
Give me a sense of what Wells Fargo do for those outside, let's say, the US, or might not be familiar with the brand, although
Yeah.
not will, and some of the scale of recruiting, the type of roles you hire for, what kind of talent you're trying to attract, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're not familiar with Wells Fargo and our brick and mortar, we are one of the largest banks in the world, primarily focused in the US. You may know some of our other brands and those things in the UK, Ireland, and throughout Europe. But we are a large organization, over 250,000 employees. We make over 50,000 hires a year, and we operate in over 80 countries. So we hire everything from, tellers and what we call our frontline or our type of retail roles, personal bankers. But then we hire some very technical roles, investment banking, technology, and then a lot of our shared services, enterprise types of functions. And so we have a large populations and pockets throughout, obviously, the US. We have large presence of over 30,000 employees in India, and then about another 25,000 in the Philippines, and then a large presence in the UK as well.
So Ryan, mostly when we've talked about candidate experience with leaders on this podcast before, they've come from the traditional perspective of I run TA, I run this part of TA, and this is our approach to candidate experience, and here's been our journey. Yours is a little different. You have a different story to tell. And this is one about walking in the shoes of the candidate. You've already hinted at it, but I wonder if you might introduce us to the unique perspective you have on this. And if you don't mind, share your story with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, you know, I want to thank you, Johnny, because as I already got kind of feel the goosebumps because I think you inspired me and gave me the confidence to talk about this story. It is a story that I've wanted to talk about for 15 months or so, but never really had the confidence to have to be able to be out there and talk about it, especially when it's in an industry where I'm talking about my peers and I'm talking about fellow people that I work with side by side in the candidate experience we've had. And so I'll talk a little bit about that journey. For me, throughout my career, I always was recruited, sought after, and convinced to join another organization. And that's a special feeling when you have that. I never really was out there looking for opportunities. I was always sought after. In 23, I went through a difficult year. I was laid off twice through two different organizations. Um, and I was hopeful coming out of it. I thought I had a well connected brand, very good on LinkedIn, very active within our community. And out of the gate, it was promising. But it was also a grind. I applied to over 300 jobs online, which is a lot. And kind of got nerded out with it. I was tracking it in a Google spreadsheet. I was, what did I like about the company? What were even some of the things I was observing from an exterior perspective of like where I thought they could change and enhance and all of that. And so I was really excited about the journey because I was collecting information about and having the opportunity to kind of peel the onion back on different companies when I was so always focused on my own organizations and what we could do better. And so throughout that journey, applying to 300 roles, early on, it started out great, right? My network was really assisting me, promoting me, helping me make connections. But as I got through the process, that's where I saw some of the darker sides of our industry. And when you have your head down and you're recruiting individual roles or you're leading recruiting teams, you don't always think about the journey and the candidate experience and putting it through the candidate lens. And that's what this gave me. And so early on, started to see some really interesting things around the candidate communications between either the recruiters and the candidate myself. A lot of recruiters, it felt like they weren't super knowledgeable about the roles, even though about this roles that I was applying for, heads of TA, heads of recruiting operations, different roles, all within, leadership within HR, didn't know a lot about the roles. So I think that was the first alarming thing about they weren't dialed into what the role was about. What were the selling points? And I felt like a lot of the recruiters, and these were some large organizations that were transactional a little bit, right? They were checking the boxes going through the process. And I thought we lost the art of the selling of the role and creating that stickiness with the candidate right off the bat by hooking them on the opportunities and the excitement. As I went through the process, I was ghosted several times, and it was throughout different points. First interview, second interview, and there was about a handful, just almost a dozen opportunities where I was in either final or at the offer stage and completely lost touch with the customer or with the candidate or the employer. Apologies. And so for me, that was starting to be alarming. And that's where you start to really internalize that. Is it me? Was it something that I did? Was I over communicating, over excited about the opportunity? Did I share too much? Did I give them too many nuggets that they could take away and implement? So I started to become a little bit guarded in the process, which changed the way I also showed up. And that's really hard because you are internalizing it. And when you try to replay it back to your friends and saying, "Oh, I think the interview went well, and this is what I talked about, and this is what," you get lots of good feedback because the people you will rely on for that, they're not sitting in the room with you. So they are assuming they're seeing one side, but they feel like you're doing it the right way. And so that was a little bit difficult for me during the process. And so as I started to collect this data, that's where I started to really focus on, each organization and more personalizing my correspondence back. Like, hey, I appreciate that, you may have gone a different direction. I would love the feedback. Here are some things you could take away that I've learned throughout the experience that I think would help you grow and create a better candidate experience. And even those personalized touches with the different folks I was interviewing with, or even the heads of departments, still kind of the communication wasn't great. Again, being ghosted. And as I started to reflect back, for me, I was like, you know what? I've done the same thing. I've probably ghosted somebody that I didn't really intend to, or I was slow on my correspondences. And so that's where really throughout this journey have been heavily focused on where can we go from increasing candidate and engagement during the process, providing more on authenticity during the journey, and truly being where in the process of where we're at and describing that. And so that's kind of a little bit about my story and where I've been at.
So Ryan, first of all, thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of folks went through a difficult year in 2023 in our industry. From the heights of 21 and 22, there was a real decline in terms of the volume of hiring. And things changed a lot. Not everyone is as brave to put it down and share it with the world. And I think it's really good you did that. If I was thinking about the aspects of your story, there's different aspects that I would like to dig into. The first is to clarify, you're not focusing on the percentage of the 300 roles that just never replied to you. You get that. That
Yeah.
happens,
Hmm.
broken systems, large volume of applications. You aren't sitting there going, that's disgraceful. I submitted an apply and you never told me if I was being rejected or not.
Hmm.
You're really honing in on, and let's say particularly I think it was 9 or 11 roles, let's say just to go to the real extreme, roles where you're the final candidate, one of the two final candidates, perhaps. They've been courting you, you've gone through a process, you've got to know them, you've shared a lot about yourself, they've invested in you, vice versa. You're like me or somebody else. We're talking about that level of engagement to zero, never
Yes.
hearing from them again, never being told you didn't get the job, not knowing if it was even filled, never being given any feedback. The equivalent to being stood up on your sixth date by someone you've got on along amazingly with and never hearing from the person again. That's a more extreme example of poor candidate experience.
Yeah.
So what I'd love to do is get your reflections, and I appreciate your kind of candidness to say, hey, maybe you've been that person. I'm listening to your story, Ryan, going, yeah, I've definitely been the person on the other end who has inadvertently disrespected a candidate, not gone back. And there may be reasons I could tell myself, the hiring manager never told me, they never gave me feedback. I didn't have feedback to give. Sometimes saying I have no feedback is feedback, right? I think in your
Hmm.
situation, there'll be a lot of learnings. You have a bit of distance from that process now, Ryan. You're in a great role, great organization, working hard, doing amazing things. And we're going to get to that in a second. What are your reflections in terms of learnings around how would you do things differently on the hiring side? What would your recommendations be to make sure that other candidates don't go through the same poor experience you do?
Yeah, that's a great one. I think it's really made me hone in on things that I was already doing in my career and really focus on with my recruiting teams. But it put a sense of heightened awareness to it. And when I talk about improving the candidate journey and the candidate experience, you may have 25 steps in your process and you can't be great at all of those. And technology can't be great for it. Your recruiter can't always be on. There's going to be limitations. And so what I've always really focused on are like, what are those 4 or 5 key moments that matter throughout the journey that you want to emphasize as your organization, what you want to stand for? Like, what are going to be your 10 commandments, so to speak? Right. And so focus on those. For me, it first starts with my recruiters of the intake or the strategy meeting with the hiring manager, really understanding the role and making sure that the recruiter has the understanding and the impact it will make, because the recruiter can then take that information and apply it back when selling it. And it creates a really great experience. I think then it starts with the journey for the candidate. That's the second place for me. On the career site, in other organizations I've been in, I've talked about, like, this is the application process. This is what to expect throughout the journey. Now, this is actually the timing, and we commit to that, right? And we called it our candidate commandments, our commitments to our candidates. And that is something the recruiters can get behind, the
Mm.
hiring managers can get behind, and then we're providing that authenticity that I think is so important throughout the experience for the candidate. And then I wanted to the third part is focus on the key communications on where you are throughout the process that you want your recruiters to stand for. You can do system automated emails. Hey, we've got your application. Here's what's next, right? And I think a lot of brands can do some really cool things with that, right? If you're a consumer brand, why not offer them? They're a potential customer to you as well. Why not offer them, hey, here's a coupon. Thanks for applying. You're interested in our company. We're going to be in touch. But in the meantime, go shop, spend $25, get $10 back. Like turn your area into a cost center or a revenue stream versus a cost center. But do some really cool things with that. I think we need to incorporate video throughout it more and be more personal, especially like in job postings and things like that. Let us see who the people are. And then one of the last areas I focus on with my recruiting teams is around what I call Friday philosophy. Every Friday, the recruiters are going to reach out to their hiring managers and their candidates and let them know where they're at in the process. Hey, hiring manager, I've got these 2 recs with you. Here's where we're at. And this is where we're going into next week. So the team is focused, staying true to the process and trying to move as fast and swift as possible. But for the candidate, it might be, hey, Johnny, we're still in the interview process of round 2. We've got 1 left. We're completing that on Tuesday, and we'll be in touch by the end of the week. But you're still in the process and being authentic about that. And that could be as simple as a phone call or a quick email. And I think those little touches, and we can use technology to automate some of those things or enhance and streamline. But I think those little moments, letting candidates know where they stand, are super critical. And that's why I brought forward Friday philosophy for my team.
I love that Friday philosophy. It's a simple thing. You'd imagine that anybody could do. You could bring into a team. It works really well. I was talking to several people after you first shared your story with me, thinking about, okay, um, you know, who's doing things that are smart and scalable to try and fix this. And some of the stuff I heard that I liked, Ryan, just to share with you. One, I was talking to some folks who are trying to change the applicant flow or structure. First of all,
Uh-huh.
a lot of folks are saying, well, the way to deal with demand or high volume demand, and I imagine in 23 there's a lot of demand for applicants for recruiter roles. And so the recruiters on the other side were dealing with huge volume of candidates. So let's deal with the first problem of, let's say, the 250 people who never even replied to you when you sent your application in. Rather than putting AI into auto reject, I was saying, let's try and reduce the applicant flow, because technology exists today that can,
Yes.
to talk to a candidate on a career site and say, hey, Ryan, what's your background? What are you interested in? And subtly suggest, hey, we don't think that's going to be a good fit. Your chances of proceeding in that role are 35%.
Mhm.
Here's a role you have a 60% chance in succeeding in, or we've no roles above 35%. Do you still want to apply? So I think there's an opportunity to use AI it's kind of rejecting before you even apply. So you never
Yeah.
become an applicant. Therefore, you're never rejected. Kind of the equivalent of, you have a best friend, you're single again, and you say to your best friend, have you got any friends suitable? What about that girl? And he's like, her, no, you and her won't work. Well, I have a cousin. My cousin will be great. This girl you mentioned, not her. Let me direct you towards my cousin and make an introduction. So it's kind of that redirection using AI at the start. So your applicant flow reduces, you're rejecting less people. That's maybe one way. The other thing, and I heard this from another TA leader, was saying they have a policy, back to your point, Ryan, in terms of having a few core philosophies or policies in your 150 stage process, picking 5 you care about deeply. And one of their philosophies was, we will come back to people in the same, we will our communication to candidates will be via the last channel that we had a communication with them. So if we last communicated, as in we got to email, we'll reply and reject by email. If we got to phone call, we'll reply and reject by phone with
Yes.
a policy. So it's kind of staging. And what they did to deal with the scale was they would email candidates that had got to a phone interview and say, hey, Ryan, you've been unsuccessful. I'd like to give you some feedback by phone. Can you click here to book a time in my diary? The majority of people will go, thanks for letting me know. I'm okay, but appreciate the offer. So they really appreciate that they could have got, actual verbal feedback. But most don't take it up. Just the offer of saying, if you'd like to, we're willing to invest the time in giving you personalized feedback actually was enough for most people. So it scaled really well. And these kind of ideas I love because they're practical and they can work. So I imagine you've heard several other stories about what different teams are doing. You've got your Friday thing, which I love. That's scalable and usable. Anything else you've heard on this journey or people maybe commented upon on the post, you thought that's interesting, I like that, that's the way we could move forward? Or even is there anything technology-wise you're seeing that could help solve some of these challenges?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about some great things, and that's what's been great about the last, month or two that we've been in, right? Conference season's been here. We've been on the road, some of us, and that's what I appreciate about most is the is not just the content and being with people, but it's these conversations, right? And so I've heard some similar things, right? I think one of the things when we're being real about the conversation is leaders need to emphasize and double down on some of those standards that they've set, and they've kind of gotten away from it, right? And so I think that's the first one. We just got to double down again and say, hey, these are our 5 things we're going to stick our flag in the ground on, and these are our non-negotiables. And I think that's the start in buying the team and holding each other accountable. And I have a similar philosophy. Like if we emailed with you, we'll email with you. If we've talked to you, we're going to call you, those types of things. So I run the similar way. As I've been reflecting back, this is a kind of a strategy that's 10 years ago, but something that I'm cooking up and I'm trying to bring to life is kind of back to the candidate experience again of like choose your own journey. And this is what I've been talking about with other TA leaders is you come to the career site, yeah, you can go traditional and put in a couple keywords and select a location and see what jobs are available. Nothing available, okay, maybe join the talent community, get noticed of something when it comes available. But the other way is, and the technology is accelerated so much more, is hey, give me your resume or drop in some skills. Maybe it's just your LinkedIn profile. And now we start to do that job recommendation. But then we're being authentic about it, kind of like what you're saying is, hey, you're a 33% match to this role and you're missing these skills. Well, you can't load every keyword into your resume or other things. So it gives you an opportunity to say, well, I do have that skill and I do have technology recruiting or whatever it might be, so that you can maybe it bumps your score up a little bit. But again, you're being authentic and real about who you are in the process. And then I think the opportunity is, hey, yeah, you're applying for a manager. We actually have this director role that we think you're actually a better fit for, or vice versa. And it puts it more authentic to the candidate and through that journey of putting the decisioning into their process. Some people are like, you know what, I'm going to go for that director role, even though I might not be qualified. But at least you're setting that example up front. I think the other way we start to embed technologies, kind of like what LinkedIn has, but hey, 200 people have viewed this job in the last week, or 30 people have applied. Also allowing candidates to know, like, what is the competition look like a little bit. It might be stiff. If the role has been open 10 days, I may not want to apply anymore, right? I just recently had a role. I had it posted for 36 hours. I had 425 applicants, and it's a role in TA. And it was really hard because I'm coming out of this experience and I was really in tune. I'm like, I'm replying to everyone. And what hiring manager, I wasn't even the recruiter, like what hiring manager is just sending a note through the ATS to say, thanks for your application. We have a ton of volume. It's going to take me a minute, but we'll be in touch, right? Like I kind of over tilted the scale on that a little bit as well. But I think providing that level up front to the recruiter or the candidate of like, hey, it's been posted 10 days. We've got 300 applies. They may not want to apply, those types of things.
I love that example in terms of you talk about LinkedIn applies and the data. You actually remind me of purchasing concert tickets on Ticketmaster. I was trying to purchase concert tickets today, and you join the queue and it says, there's 18,000 ahead of you. You're like, oh. And then I got an update going 3 minutes into my queue. It said, hey, just so you know, we're now at the point there's limited availability left, even before I got to the top of the queue. That's an expectation we have as a consumer in other areas. To your point, to go, hey, 12,000 people have already applied for this one job. Straight away, you're like, you make up, what, I'm not going to be 12,001.
Yeah.
What's the point?
Yeah.
Right. Or, you're the 6th person to apply. Good one. Brilliant. Right. So that context, the technology exists. I love that, taking those consumer examples. Let me shift gear, if you don't mind, Ryan.
Yeah.
Because, I'd love to hear about your current role. You're back in employer branding. And to you, I know employer branding and candidate experience are very much intertwined. So maybe you could share your thoughts on that and maybe walk me through what has interested you as you've been out and about for the last 2 months and seeing different technology. Because I think AI is changing everything in employer branding.
Yeah.
There's some new tech, there's some emerging tech there. So maybe we start with your current role, maybe that connection, and then maybe we can talk about what you've seen or what you're excited about.
Yeah, I think there's 3 or 4 things I've been really excited about in the marketplace, in the conversations I'm having, and the focus of other employment brand and recruitment marketing folks are talking about, right? I think I'm excited about the personalization that AI and technology is bringing to the place. how do we do that? And how do you take that personalization, but keep your core brand elements and your tone and your voice? I think that will be the things we have to work through versus just like letting the technology do it. We still have to have that human element to it and those automations. But what I'm really starting to see in the marketplace and I'm loving and it's inspiring me is the content around employee advocacy or the storytelling that is going on, either whether it's well-being or the things that are going on in the company's history in the marketplace and what they are focused on. I think that's a big one. Some of the things on the authenticity and transparency I'm seeing more of. The more raw employee testimonial type videos versus these higher production, which I think the technology has allowed us to scale that much faster, right? And we're looking at ways, how do we do that within job postings, even just job promotions, right? When we have a specific role, we hire a bunch of, how do we just create these more authentic, on the fly videos? And so we're doing some more video on demand with our employees, and we want them in their elements. Hey, you're walking the dog before work, grab the video. We don't care if it's a little shaky, all of those things. You might hairs in a bun. We don't care. Like, that's who you are. And that's what we embrace at Wells Fargo. Right. And so I think those are some of the stories that we'll really be able to dial more into. And I think the last one is starting to think about some of the immersive experiences that we can do, right? Like, we remember the days on the career site where you could like tour the office in 3D and you had these models of what the office. Now, what does that look like with maybe some VR or the different things that we can bring to the table using AI and the technology? Even some, I mean, Johnny, you and I have it. We got to experience it. The AI smart meta glasses that we were rocking in Phoenix together, right? Like, and the things that can do. Like, what can technology do to create some really cool experiences, day in the life, and things like that?
Yeah, I'm with you on the personalization. I think we thought we were rocking those glasses. I'm not sure others did, Ryan, but let's just drop that one for the moment.
Yeah.
I'll stick with the
We
rocking.
were looking good,
Um,
brother.
we look great, man. Our 70s gear as well. I think, I look at AI and personalization. I look employer branding, and I cannot wait until we have a world where, let's call it a career site, because I'm not sure it'll be a web browser experience per se. But let's say if somebody wants to understand what Wells Fargo is like to work in, and they click on Wells Fargo. And I say click on Wells Fargo, it could be from a Google search, it could be within an AI chatbot. I know where they find it, could be on a social
Mm-hmm.
networking site. And the experience they have, which today is a kind of customized navigation that might have some level of personalization where it drops some cookies and understands your profile, your region, might give you some insights. But it's literally built on the fly by AI with a brand palette, a kind of data bank of base information, but it builds the website or web page I need as a candidate just for me. And the
Yes.
journey I take through that is like personalized down to nobody else is going to experience this exact experience. And everyone that comes has that deeply personalized view. That I think is possible
Yeah.
today, not just in the future. That's possible today. You put enough horsepower behind it, put a product in it. I think that's where we're getting to in terms of the career page or career brand personalization, right? That's going to do all that for us, which excites me. And then other versions of that. I heard other things like somebody was telling me about an AI tool that was available on a career site where you could ask any questions about the comp and bends, and it allowed candidates, a candidate before they applied or during the application process to ask very personal questions about someone's benefits package that they probably don't want to ask a recruiter or a hiring manager. It might be about, diseases someone might have or disabilities or illnesses. It might be about maternity or paternity questions,
Mm-hmm.
about adoption leave. And you're like, I don't want to ask them because then they're going to go, oh, you're planning that, are you? But I want to know because I need to have it if I'm going to take a job here.
Yes.
And AI powered chatbots that have such intelligence, but are not judgmental and are connected to the hiring decision. Those kind of tools are simple, I'd argue, from a sophisticated personalized website down to a simple chatbot with some information that someone can interrogate anonymously.
Yeah.
There's loads of ways to deeply personalize the process. But going back to the point around, candidate experience, I think there's a danger of getting carried away with technology and employer brand. And as you said before we went on air, you're like, candidate experience is employer branding. And
Yes.
it's almost probably the thing, if there's any lesson from your story, Ryan, it isn't that you should invest in lots of new technology. It's about getting the basics right because that is your employer brand. Would
Yep.
that be fair to say?
Yeah, I call it that you have to be able to block and tackle in the basics before you do anything else, right? And so I think you have to focus on the fundamentals. And then again, you can through stair stepping, layer in technology at again those key moments that matter to drive that experience, to automate, to streamline whatever it might be, while remaining human centric. Again, we said it before, but how your candidate experience is your employer brand, and what your candidates feel is who you are on the street, and that's some of the data points and those things that we're trying to glean and pull into our experiences. You talked about this chatbot idea. I think it's great because you can personalize, you can provide amazing content and answers to candidates that want to get more. How do we start to ingest more into that, right? How do we pull in Glassdoor insights into that chatbot experience where they can, hey, don't take Wells Fargo's standard boilerplate response to that. Here's what our candidate's saying, and you have to live with it, right? We've got some great scores around company well-being, the direction, some of the leadership, our benefits, diversity. There's some other things that we don't do great, but I don't want to shy away from it because it's who we are. We've recognized it and we're focused on improving in those areas. That's why they're strategic priorities and those types of things. So I think, how do you pull more of those things into that experience that gives the data points? Similar, like if I went to Copilot right now, right? Who is Wells Fargo and what are some of the benefits of the organization? They're going to give me something back, but how do we ingest more into that?
Love that. It's playing the game in front of you, not trying to
Yeah,
just orchestrate it to be perfect.
exactly. Yeah.
Ryan, really appreciate your insights. To close, you talk about block and tackle, maybe just to share with our audience. You have a second job that's almost a full-time job as well, right? So tell us a little bit about your coaching and how's the team doing?
So yes, on the side, I don't know if it's on the side because it's a full-time job, right? For about 5 months of the year. But I appreciate, like Wells Fargo and other organizations I've had the opportunity to work at because they allow me to do. I'm a high school football coach for both girls football, which is new in the States, but then also in the fall with the boys. And it makes me a better employee because I'm really passionate about it. But it allows me to do similar things I do at work. I'm a leader. I love coaching. I love developing talent on and off the field, so to speak. So I have those opportunities, which is really a lot of fun. Girls are going to the playoffs this weekend, so that'll be exciting. So by the time this airs, hopefully we'll be on to the next round and victorious. And then the boys are hungry and they're excited to get going. But it's an amazing opportunity that I have to be able to do that.
Ryan, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show, to hear from you. I'm looking forward to seeing you again in the fall, hopefully, when we'll be back in full conference season
Yeah,
again. But in the meantime, again, appreciate your honesty, sharing with that story, giving the insights, not focusing just on the negatives, being realistic about it and talking about how we can learn and be better as an industry and really aspire for that hiring
absolutely.
excellence. It's what the show is all about. Ryan, thanks for joining
Absolutely.
us.
Thank you, Johnny. Appreciate you.
And thank you for joining us this week and hearing Ryan's story. Hopefully that's touched you and you've learned something you can bring back to your organization, your business. If you enjoyed this show, don't forget to follow us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you find your podcasts. Or if you like this show, leave us a comment. If you did not like the show, do not leave us a comment. Don't any negative stuff, just the good stuff. No, genuinely, leave your comments as well. Huge thanks to our team, Roshin, Simon, and Niall as well for this podcast together. We'll be back next week with another great show. Until then, see you then.